Okay, so we left off talking about neurotransmitters. So neurotransmitters are two basic categories, key categories here, excitatory and inhibitory. So it's actually really easy to explain this because excitatory, well, what does excitatory mean? It excites the neuron. It increases the chances of firing. Now, we're not going to get into, it has to do with the ions and ion channels, why it does that. We're not going to get into that. But just think about it as excitatory is kind of like if you want a gun to fire, what do you do? Like I've ever actually fired a gun in my life, but water guns maybe. So if you press on the trigger, right, more and more pressure on the trigger, it's eventually going to fire if you put enough pressure on it. Well, excitatory is kind of like that. It's like pressing on the trigger. You want to increase the chance that the neuron that you're talking to, that you're sending a message to fire. So it's like pressing on its trigger if it were a gun. Or, okay, we may have not all touched a gun or fired a gun before, but let's say we've all assumingly flushed the toilet. It's the same kind of thing, is that you push pressure on the flusher, right? You want to try to get it to flush. Same thing. So excitatory is like putting pressure to increase the chance that the neuron's going to fire. Inhibitory is the opposite. So if I inhibit you, stop you, right? I'm blocking you. So it's like kind of like if we had the gun example with a trigger. So instead of pushing on the trigger forward towards you to fire it, it's like you actually have your finger behind the trigger and you're pushing it the other way. If that makes any sense. So it's like you're not only not wanting it to fire, but you're actually you're stopping it from even having any chance of firing. So it's not like you're trying to increase the chance of firing. You're actually doing the opposite. So you're pressing the other way against the trigger. Or it's like I'm pushing up on the toilet bowl flusher. So it'll probably break it. But so instead of pushing down to try to get it to flush, I'm pushing it up. That would be inhibitory, what an inhibitory neurotransmitter message would be. So why do we have excitatory and inhibitory? Well, remember the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system? So sympathetic gets you aroused, ready for action in a good way, like for sex, or in a bad way, like somebody's coming after you with a chainsaw or something like that. And parasympathetic calms you down. Well, there you go. So sympathetic would be more excitatory. Parasympathetic, calming you down, would be more inhibitory. So it's like we hear a loud noise. Excitatory neurotransmitters get sent. We're scared, or you're startled, and then we realize it's a car backfiring outside. Inhibitory, calming us down. That's where inhibitory neurotransmitter messages are sent. But it doesn't have to be just with emotion. Let's say I'm picking up this pencil on my desk here. So to pick it up, that's an excitatory message, right? I want to pick this up. So my muscles have to contract to pick this up. Muscles have to move. But then when I put it back down again and rest my arm down, that's inhibitory. So picking up the pencil, excitatory messages, resting my hand after I'm done, putting it down, that's inhibitory. Okay, so we've got 5 neurotransmitters we're going to go over. There are many more. But just to go through some of these, and this will correspond to when we talk about drugs here in a little bit. So we've got dopamine. You probably heard of dopamine, probably associated with drugs, but that's not the only thing it's associated with. It's actually, if I asked you how does dopamine make you feel, dopamine makes you feel kind of euphoric in a giddy, excited way, like happy and like, I don't know, something good happened to you. It makes you feel rewarded. Like you want to do this again. So it feels good. You got an A on a test. Dopamine's released. Eating. You're hungry and you like the food you're eating. Dopamine's released. Drugs, sex, all the same. In fact, dopamine's related to addictive behaviors because when something feels good, when something's rewarding, what do you want to do in the future? You want to do it again, right? So dopamine can create addictions, and you can pretty much get addicted to anything. You get addicted to video games. People laugh about it, but it's actually true. I mean, it's not like, oh, it's just you could get addicted to drugs. It's not true at all. So dopamine is more excitatory message. more of an excitatory message. The other thing that dopamine's involved with, other than making you feel good, happy in an excited way, rewarding, is actually movement. A lot of people don't know that. So dopamine is very important in movement. If you've heard of the disorder Parkinson's disease, that is a lack of dopamine or lack of enough dopamine. And so people with this disorder, they have trouble moving, and they have tremors, resting tremors. You'll see them shake. If you know who Michael J. Fox is, I know you guys are mostly, this is way before your time. You probably would know him best from the movies Back to the Future, the Back to the Future movies. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's actually pretty young. Most people are not diagnosed until, I don't know, close to late 50s, maybe, something like that. But yeah, he was diagnosed, I think, in his 30s. So it's pretty sad. But anyways, so it's inefficient dopamine. One of my professors actually has Parkinson's. One of my old professors, I should say, at UCF, and he had a surgery that actually implanted electrodes into his brain. And what it did is it stimulated an area called the substantia nigra, which is in the midbrain, and it's stimulated to release dopamine. So pretty cool. I mean, certainly not a surgery that you want to have. I mean, it's like this is pretty extensive surgery here, open brain surgery. You've heard of open heart. Well, this is open brain, and he had a device that he could kind of increase the current, kind of like a dimmer switch in a way, a light dimmer switch. So he had this done, and he was pretty normal functioning when he had the current running. Couldn't really tell. Like, if you didn't know that he had Parkinson's, couldn't tell. But he showed us one day in class. He turned it off, and he went from this to like moving back and forth. I mean, it was incredible, the difference. It was shocking. I mean, it was really something else. So anyway, just a little bit about that. Now, so I said dopamine's involved in movement. Lack of dopamine can cause Parkinson's disease. Too much dopamine is involved in something called Tourette syndrome. You may have heard of Tourette syndrome. So that's people where they have tics that they can't control. Physical movements, jerks. It could be also verbal. It could be verbal and physical actions. So sometimes it's bad words. So they'll say over and over again bad words, just out loud, inappropriately, and they can't control it. They have no control over it, and it's because of excess dopamine. There are medicines. There's no cure for it. There's no cure for Parkinson's. Actually, sadly, Parkinson's is fatal eventually. Tourette's is not fatal, but there's no cure for it, and it's tough to obviously live with that. Some people have worse symptoms than others. So serotonin is our next transmitter. That's a neurotransmitter. That's inhibitory. So this makes you feel good, but more in a calm, relaxing, chill way. And if you're thinking marijuana, yes, that's what I mean. And I mean, that's not the only thing that serotonin's involved in. But yeah, we'll get to the drugs in a little bit here. But yeah, serotonin, it also makes you feel good, but more of a calm way. So it can make you actually kind of relaxed and sleepy. So Thanksgiving is in less than 2 weeks. You've heard of, I don't know about you, but I'm just getting hungry just think about it. But anyways, people say like when they eat turkey, what happens? Take a nap. They get tired because there's something in turkey. It's in other things too, called tryptophan serotonin that helps to build serotonin in the body when you ingest it. So yeah, so that's what serotonin does. A lack of serotonin can make you depressed, can make you anxious. In Chapter 15 on clinical disorders, on mental illness, in other words, we're going to talk more about serotonin and its connection with anxiety and depression, which are the two most common mental illnesses out there. Okay, so acetylcholine, GABA, and glutamate. I'm going to talk more about that when we get to the drugs. But just for right now, just know acetylcholine, as it says in the slides, excitatory. GABA stands for gamma-aminobutyric acid, that is more inhibitory, and glutamate is more excitatory. Okay, so one last thing here before we move on, the lock and key mechanism. So neurotransmitters. So let's go back to the beginning. So we've got this electrical signal that is generated, right? Transduction. Remember transduction. And so the electrical signal goes through the neuron. When it gets to the terminals, the presynaptic terminals, it releases now a chemical messenger, neurotransmitters. So they float across the synapse, and it has to attach to the dendrites of the postsynaptic or receiving neuron. Now, the neurotransmitters can't just go anywhere it wants. It has to attach to the right place. It has to be the right shape. Kind of like not any key can open a door, a lock, right? It has to be the right shaped key. It has to be the right key. So that's what's going on here. The lock and key mechanism says that the neurotransmitters can't just go anywhere they want. They have to attach to the correct receptor site. Its correct shape. So you remember as a kid, maybe you played with this where like you had the square holes, the circle holes, the triangle holes, and you had to put the right shape into the right hole? Same thing. Same idea, in a way. Simplifying it, but yeah, I mean basically the neurotransmitters can't just go anywhere they want. They have to go to the right place. And if they can't find the right place, then they don't attach. What happens there? They could get washed away into waste. They could be recycled into the neuron, lots of things. Broken down into parts or whatever. But yeah, so that's a lock and key mechanism. Okay, so I'm going to stop it here.